All right, go ahead and roll for perception.
I got a 13.
Hey, that's pretty good. With that, you can tell there's some fantasy situations going on. You hear some adult language, and with that, you can tell this podcast probably isn't for kids. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Dungeoncast. I'm Brian.
And I'm Will.
This is the podcast where we talk about everything Dungeons & Dragons, from recalcitrant rogues to rabid revenants. And today, we are talking about gnomes.
Gnomes.
Prepare yourselves.
I cast Fireball. The Dungeoncast.
What's a gnome?
So gnomes are another short race, much like halflings. I am not
Short-statured.
Yeah, short-statured. Yes, they're very small. As a matter of fact, they have a high tendency to be shorter and smaller than halflings.
Okay,
which is pretty impressive because halflings are very small.
Yeah.
Gnomes are a really strange race. We're going to talk about three subraces of gnomes, all three of which are very different from each other. More drastically than, say, like the subraces of elves or the drow or dark elves are very different from...
Or dwarves.
Yeah,
dwarves are surprisingly
dwarves.
Similar.
Yeah, like all dwarves are dwarves. Dwarfs are dwarfs are dwarfs are dwarf.
Beach dwarf.
Gnomes. What do you know about gnomes?
I know that my dad likes to buy them and put them in the yard.
Oh,
and
garden
it creeps me the hell out.
What's the company with the gnome? Is it Travelocity or...
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah,
with the travel gnome.
That's
cool.
funny that you mentioned this episode is brought to you by Travelocity.
Oh, of course it's
Psych.
I fucking wish. Moving on, I would gladly take their money.
My dad does have like a gnome that is riding like a bullfrog. And
That's pretty cool.
That one creeps me out the least. It's very actually kind of funny.
Yeah, and that is very reminiscent of like fey creatures, which gnomes in this, though they don't have the fey ancestry, they're very traditionally fey-ish creatures, fey-based sometimes, especially the forest gnomes, which we'll get into. I did some reading on the origins of gnomes in general, and they actually they came about during the Renaissance, which is an odd time for fantasy things to come about, since that was more of a religious time. But they were created as the antithesis of fairies. While fairies were more elegant and luminous and whatnot, gnomes were more rocky and ugly, and they're just like the opposite.
Yes,
and they had a
opposite side of the same coin, if you will.
Exactly, and stories and artwork was rendered of them at that time, and they just kind of became a little popular, and then probably faded out of popularity. I'm not sure when D&D started using gnomes. I don't know if they were in the first edition, but they've been in every edition that I've played.
I bet those Renaissance gnomes traditionally wear like high-waisted shorts and like pointy hats.
I'm sure they did. I'm sure they had very knobby and stunted features as well. I think that's most people's classic like image of the gnome. Gnomes in D&D are a lot different than that. Although they can be kind of like that.
Is it like a leprechaun? Are leprechauns a thing in D&D? I know that we had a leprechaun in a game.
Yeah. They're not in the monster manual now, but I'm sure they'll pop up somewhere. Again, that would be probably a fey-based creature.
If you reskin if you reskin for a leprechaun, would you use a gnome? Are they like close enough?
Some of the things. Okay, so gnomes are interesting in D&D. They're very magically inclined.
Okay, so they're
very smart. They're very cunning.
They're casting spells.
Let's go over the things that like define gnomes. Because there's a lot of personality traits that gnomes have a tendency to have that's very reminiscent of halflings. Like they're very affable and very enthusiastic and energetic. They're very curious like halflings. They're actually way more curious than halflings. Like halflings can contain it. Gnomes are just curious about everything and anything. One of the things about gnomes is their hair tends to stick out in all directions.
Oh.
It's very easy to spot a gnome because like it doesn't just like, not like they have what's the word, like bedhead. It's not like that. It's like literally like Japanese anime style where it's just like things like cloud
like
stripe.
Yu-Gi-Moto.
Yeah, exactly. It's like just poof all over the place.
Okay, so it's not like frayed out. It's just like sticking out in big
almost
like
stylized.
pieces.
It looks kind of cool actually, I think.
Interesting.
Gnomes are gnomes are to elves like what halflings are to men. There's a lot of like similarities. They have the pointed ears. They live long lives. They're very fae-based. They're very magically inclined.
I get you.
They're
I
like
get what
the
you're saying.
elves of halflings.
I got you.
I mean, that is super simplifying it. It's not that simple because gnomes are actually very
Diverse.
unserious and
I see.
constantly joking, and they live very fast lives, while elves live more longer, slower, wiser,
Yeah.
serious lives.
Yeah.
But
The elves seem to
It's
take
still-
things very seriously
it's-
all the time.
yeah, they do, and but it is it's a good parallel as far as I'm concerned. Gnomes are very mischievous.
Yes.
They tend to get in
Yes.
a lot of trouble. They're very Merry and Pippin-esque from Lord of the Rings. This, to me, ties into the fact that they tend to be Fey-based creatures or Fey-related creatures.
Are they
and,
thieves? Are they like seen
I
as
think-
thieves?
I mean, they can be. Kender, which are like a halfling subrace, are they're thieves. Gnomes aren't really known as thieves. Like, not in my experience. There are known thieves.
I keep seeing a Tumblr post that's like party of Kenders doing it.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, no,
No,
you shouldn't.
I
And
wouldn't
there's
do
like,
that.
I am. And
I wouldn't. I love Kenders. I do. I think they're a great race to read about. I don't think they function too well in a D&D setting.
everyone's just got to be down.
Yeah, everyone's got to be down. And
Everything is everyone's.
You could probably only have one or two. You can't have a whole party of them. That would just be.
You're constantly switching
insufferable.
weapons.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That'd be kind of charming. Like, it would be cool for like a 1 or 2 shot. I'm not.
Yeah,
there's
that's
no
good.
way I'm getting involved in a campaign that's all Kender.
Maybe
No
your
way.
one shot goes really well.
And you just fall in love with the characters.
And you just, now you're campaigning like
be.
a bunch of Kenders
You never-
running
you
around,
never
stealing
know.
everything forever.
You never know.
All of
Gnomes
your everything
live.
has belonged to us.
Right. Gnomes live a very long time. Not as long as elves, but longer than dwarves. They live anywhere from 300 to 500 years long.
Shit.
Yeah, they unlike elves, they do show their age. Elves stay youthful looking to the day they die.
Right. So a gnome would just like become older and older looking. So what, like around the 100-year marker? Well, let me phrase it like this: is a gnome's lifespan like physically stretched out to the point where when they're near the end, they start looking like how a human would look as an old person? Is it like that, or do they age like, let's say they age like a human, where like 80 years goes by and they look like they're 80, like they're all wrinkled and stuff, and then they just keep on going?
No, it's more like gnomes usually reach maturity around 40 years old. That's
Okay.
when they become an adult.
Cool.
So it's just stretched out over that time.
Gotcha.
Although some of the images you see of like old wizened gnomes, they look really old. They're like 102 with like a whatever walking stick and like a cane, if you will, hunched over and like
Yeah.
whatever. So they live these long lives, but as I said, unlike elves, they're not like, they don't take their time about anything. If anything, gnomes often feel like they don't have enough time to do all the things they want to do in life, despite having all this time
interesting.
to
Yeah.
live. Words fly out of their mouths like so fast. Sometimes I've seen like iterations of gnomes where like literally when you're reading like their dialogue, all their words run together with no spaces in between them. So you're like, what did they say?
The fuck you saying to me, bro?
And other characters that are dealing with them like often make them repeat themselves. 'Cause
Interesting.
they speak so quickly.
Oh, that's gonna
they
be
just-
that's a hard NPC to throw
Yeah,
in.
as a hard NPC, I don't have my gnomes do that because that's annoying. But but if you're a player, maybe you do want to do that, and that's kind of cool. I think it'd be cool. I wouldn't like the reason for me that it's annoying is because I wouldn't want to have to do that all the time. But
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind if a player at my table wanted to do that.
I
all
know
the
some
time.
people that are really good at it.
Yeah,
they can,
that's the thing,
They can
like-
run their mouth.
Yeah, there you go. So yeah, they're fast speakers. They have a tendency not to take things too seriously a lot of times. Okay, so I say that with a big grain of salt because sometimes there are very serious gnomes. Rock gnomes tend to be way more serious, while forest gnomes are way more whimsical. But at the same time, it's kind of inconsistent.
How many different gnomes we got?
We got 3.
Got
We got
three-
3
okay.
gnomes.
That's
We're
not
gonna
as
talk
many
about
as
all
I
3
thought
of
you were
them.
about to tell
I'm
me
doing
there are.
general gnome knowledge right now.
That general gnome knowledge.
Yeah,
That good
exactly.
GG.
That good GGK.
Yeah.
There we go. Okay. So yeah, they have a tendency. They have a rep of being jokesters and pranksters and just all around mischief makers. They make great bards. They're considered good entertainers. They're very clever and they're very cunning. Now this is truly across all 3 iterations of gnomes. They're all very smart in their own way.
Okay.
And all 3 are very magically inclined. Like forest gnomes will gain. I think they gain a cantrip. I know that they all have what's called Gnome Cunning, where they have advantage on all charisma, wisdom, and intelligence saving throws when it comes to saving off any magical effects.
Oh, shit.
They're just really good at that. Like,
So-
magic doesn't affect them as much because they're really just in tune with it.
Because illusion stuff is usually magic, right?
Yeah. Oh, illusion. That's what it is. Forest gnomes get minor illusion. Just they all have it.
That's
they all can do it.
awesome.
Yeah, it's really cool.
So you can be a fighter, but you can do minor illusion.
Yeah, absolutely. You can do any
Nice.
class,
Yeah. So that's what you mean when you say a gnome is magically inclined. Because I was like, how would they, if you're picking a non-magical class, what's going on there? And there it is.
You gain the minor illusion cantrip no matter what.
Sweet.
And all gnomes get a +2 to intelligence. That is their main stat that gets boosted. They make great wizards.
Nice.
Great alchemists, great artificers, great all that stuff.
It's like I'm thinking about what's his name from 007 GoldenEye. Odd Job.
I've never seen.
Odd Job is super short, and all of the playable characters in GoldenEye are like double the height.
Is that why I always hear no odd job?
No odd job,
No odd
'cause you
job
can't
he's short.
shoot
You
that
can't shoot the
motherfucker.
dude. Oh my god. I feel like I'm super late to the party on this joke.
Yes.
Like I'm like 15 years late.
That's about right.
Okay. Well,
Welcome
I'm
to the
glad
joke,
I
Will.
understand it now.
Yeah, Odd Job. Are gnomes Odd Job? Do they get like up? Are they harder to hit?
No, they don't.
Yeah, AC
in
doesn't
other
really-
iterations, they might. Okay, so I know that the halfling, in some iterations of D&D, I don't think 5th edition, literally get AC bonuses or advantages on like avoiding bigger creatures than themselves because they're so small and nimble. Gnomes
Okay.
don't get it here, but it's possible in previous editions they did just like halflings. I don't know, but no, they're not in 5th edition. They're not odd jobs.
Okay. Oh well.
One last general thing I want to talk about when it comes to gnomes is, much like hobbits, gnomes live underground in all iterations. Even forest gnomes that live deep in the forest, they're more like hobbits, making their homes in little hills.
Okay.
Cutouts. They all live under the ground in some capacity, but not nearly as much as dwarves. They require fresh air. They're not like dwarves that like can live underground
hold up
for
forever.
all their lives.
Yeah.
And just fucking love that shit. Gnomes aren't quite like that.
Man, it's dark in here. I love this shit.
Yeah, fucking love
Man, they are stale, but I love this shit so much.
and
dwarves.
because of the whole underground thing, they all get dark vision. Most
Sweet.
of the things in this game get dark vision. It's actually interesting because it wasn't like that in previous editions.
Yeah. Seeing
It's
in the dark
actually
is like you can just see all the time.
yeah, just all the
Sweet.
time. You just never can't not see. So unless it's magical.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
What's that spell that does darkness?
Darkness,
What
yeah.
is it, like a big 40 foot, 30 foot?
I don't
cube?
remember the metrics on it, but it's a big.
It's fucking
old
troublesome is
black
what it
cloud
is.
that you can't see through no matter what, unless
Especially
you
when-
cast it.
Multiple people are popping it up.
Yeah. So gnomes, unlike halflings, like okay, so I think when we talked about halflings, we talked about how halflings have found themselves integrating with all cultures across the world. People like them, people accept them pretty much
Yeah.
everywhere, and they integrate in dwarven cities. They're involved in elven communities. They're involved in all cities, human cities and towns. Gnomes, not so much. Gnomes tend to stay in really close knit, private communities, secreted away somewhere.
Okay.
You do have plenty of gnomes that venture out and then are parts of cities. I love having gnome NPCs. I've only played one gnome before and it was a lot of fun, but like I have way more fun with gnome NPCs.
Okay. They do seem interesting.
Yeah, because like they're whimsical.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't
Little
necessarily
piece of
want to
the
play a
fae running
whimsical
around in your
character.
town.
Exactly. And so I've had some really funny NPCs and some really cool interactions with my players and gnome NPCs. But like I said, there are plenty of gnomes that, of course, venture forth from these communities. Otherwise, you wouldn't have gnome adventurers.
Right.
But as generally speaking, they tend to live in very close-knit communities that are very secretive.
I see.
Forest gnomes, which is the first iteration we're going to go over, are the most fey-like. And I would almost say like the only really fey-like of the three types of gnomes. I generally see them drawn a little bit taller than some other gnomes.
Okay.
They have like highly colored hair a lot of the time.
Like a troll doll.
Yeah, very much so actually, and generally like super pointed ears and all that, very elven like.
Okay.
And they are the ones that are especially good at like illusions, so that's why they get the minor
Nice.
illusion cantrip. They're the most mischievous and whimsical, and they don't take anything seriously kind of deal. But they're also very very in tune with nature. And nature
Okay.
is very, very important to gnomes.
I was gonna ask, like, what roots them into like a community, and when you're whimsical like that.
Yeah, it's they stick together in their like forest domain, and they usually have it protected by many illusions, so people can't just find them. And they're so attuned with nature that all forest gnomes are capable of speaking with small creatures.
Okay,
You just get that. You can just have conversations with small beasts.
nice.
So it's really cool.
That's really
Yeah.
stupid useful, actually.
Yeah, that was really cool. I've always liked the idea of running like a gnome wizard, and you use Find Familiar to have like, I don't know, a pet cat.
Right,
And you
right.
just have whole conversations with your kitty cat.
That's pretty
It'd
sweet.
be pretty cool.
Yeah, familiars are really cool. We'll
They're-
get into that another time.
They're the most stealthy of the three gnomes. They get bonus to dexterity.
Ooh, I like that.
Which is of course very handy. And they're the most like secretive. Again, they're the ones the most hidden away.
Are they
And
into
they're
treasure?
I mean, not any more or less than any other race from what
Okay.
I know.
They're
They're
not
not like leprechauns.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
where I'm trying to differentiate a little bit, because I got the
Yeah.
leprechaun in my
They're
brain
not,
now.
Yeah, they're not leprechauns.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, so forest gnomes attuned with nature, natural illusionists, very fey-like, very mischievous and whimsical, very stealthy and very secretive. They're probably the least common gnome, that an adventurer may come across, because again, they're in their hidden secret
Yeah,
communities.
you're
I
not
think-
gonna like stumble upon it unless you're like trying to, maybe.
Yeah.
Like
Well-
stumbling upon it seems hard when they're like
Yes,
wrapped in illusions.
Definitely, they're the type of gnomes you're gonna find throughout the Feywild.
Right. Okay. So they're
I-
living like in the Feywild.
Yeah, I've seen
dang.
that like iterated. Like in 4th edition, like gnomes were of the Fey, and they were in the Feywild, all
Cool.
up in it with the Eladrin. Like, and I like that iteration of the gnomes. It's my favorite. I like rock gnomes a lot, but I just like forest gnomes better.
So they are fake creatures.
Yeah, except for in 5th edition. In 4th edition, they literally had Fey ancestry. In this one, they don't.
Okay.
Not like elves. Elves have Fey
Elves have
ancestry
Fey
in this game.
ancestry.
I said that forest gnomes are probably the least likely for an adventurer to find. That's actually wrong. The deep gnomes are, but of the main two, rock and forest gnomes are going to be a little less common. So on the flip side of forest gnomes are rock gnomes, which are drastically different from forest gnomes. These are the city dwellers. These are the miners and crafters. Rock gnomes are the most notorious inventors in D&D.
Like an
they're also known
artificer
as
type artificer. Is
yeah,
that the-
artificery and alchemy and just general machinery and invention. Rock gnomes are also known as tinker gnomes because of this. They tinker
yeah,
around with
okay.
stuff. They don't have the speak with small beasts. They don't have the illusion stuff, and they don't have the dexterity bonus. They're a little hardier. They're a bit more dwarf-like.
Yeah, they're into material things, it seems.
They are. They're not greedy like dwarves are, but they do get a +1 in Constitution, just like dwarves do.
Okay.
They are
more
very
meat.
intelligent. While like dwarves get I think it's called stone crafters lore or something like that for their race. They get what's called artificers lore, where they can make an intelligence or history check related to magical items, alchemical objects, technological devices, and they can add twice of their proficiency bonus instead of just their proficiency bonus.
Oh, hell yeah.
They just got this inherent like mechanical mind.
DMs beware.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, even though they don't have the natural ability to cast the spells, they do have the natural ability to understand magic.
Nice.
And mechanical stuff as well. They also, so they get this really cool feature called Tinker, and there's no other feature that any other race gets that's like this. But basically, they gain a proficiency in artisans' tools called Tinker tools. And using those tools, they can spend an hour and 10 gold worth of materials to craft one of 3 objects. The 3 objects are a clockwork toy, which is like a toy usually in the shape of like an animal or a monster, maybe a person. Really
like
anything.
a wind-up
like a
toy?
exactly.
Like
it's
walk
a
around?
wind-up toy.
That's cool.
And it'll like
That's really
pop
cool.
or whatever.
Okay.
A fire starter, think like a Zippo lighter.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, which like doesn't
just
sound.
fucking-
Yeah, can you imagine? You just
Hell
like
yeah.
back in medieval times, you might as well cast light or fireball.
Oh, yeah,
well, not
absolutely.
fireball, but yeah.
You need some aerosol for that. Aerosol can.
Yeah, or a Molotov cocktail.
Yeah.
But fireball, bitch. And
Hey,
then
don't tempt me, man.
Yeah, and
Don't tempt me.
then that'd be so much fun to run a gnome that's just like straight alchemist and just blowing shit up all the time. That's
He's
cool.
literally like carrying like bottles of rubbing alcohol on him.
I can't wait for an actual
Can you make
alchemist
a,
class.
can you make a
to come up
Molotov
with.
cocktail with rubbing alcohol? Is
I
that
don't
like?
know.
I don't
I
really
don't
know how to make a
Brian,
Molotov cocktail.
I do not. associate myself with criminal activities, and quite frankly, I'm offended that you asked me.
I'm going to learn how to make a Molotov cocktail,
and I don't want to know about it.
I'll do it.
Don't tell me.
I'll do it in between
I'm
episodes.
I'm the lawful good side of this podcast.
I'm the chaotic neutral.
So the gnomes can, the Tinker Gnomes can, or Rock Gnomes can make one more thing, and that's a music box, which is kind of nice.
Sweet.
That's
Okay.
cool. You know,
I could
like
see
outside
you
of the
applying that
fire
as, like, a
starter,
gift. Yikes.
outside of the fire starter, there's no like real mechanical benefit to these creations, but like the concept's just really cool and very flavorful, and I really like it.
Well, I could see you doing like a persuasion check. Like, here, I'll give you this this music box that I just fucking made.
That's
It's
true,
one of a
and
kind.
It's unique. Yeah.
It plays a sweet ass tune that I love.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, you totally could. I wish I saw more gnomes in my D&D experience. Not a lot of people like to play the short races for some reason. I
Yeah.
think they're really cool. I think they're really charming.
Maybe they're forgotten about because
Maybe. I think people associate being small with being weak, and they don't want to be weak because they don't want to die.
that is not the case in D&D.
But I mean, these guys can hold themselves up in a fight, much like halflings can. Like, if anything, halflings are hard to take down a lot of the time because of their freaking lucky ability
Oh my
and
God.
whatnot. But speaking of combat, I'm getting a little tired. I think it might be time for a short rest.
Short rest time. Let's do
do it.
this. Hey everybody, thanks for listening and watching once again. Always appreciate that support, the outpouring of people coming out and touching on our stuff, giving us feedback, leaving comments, hitting up that iTunes, giving us that solid rating. Man, I can't say enough how much we appreciate you guys. Thank you very much. In fact, I think Will has some people that he'd like to reach out to in particular.
Yeah, it's shout out time, my friend. Yeah, we want to do some shout outs to some people that have been tweeting out links to our show. We really appreciate it, and we want to say thank you. So thank you, Roz651 Egghead. Thank you, Castle Red Fox. Thank you, Geek Girl Bookworm, and thank you, Half Orc Bard. You guys tweeted out the
Nice
show
names.
and to your followers and hashtag Dungeoncast, and thank you. Awesome.
Yeah, thank you indeed.
Yeah, absolutely. And just so you know, all these people have been entered into the contest to win one of two books that we were giving out. We're giving out 2 copies of Tales from the Yawning Portal, which is going to be the newest D&D book coming out. I think it comes out on April 3rd. This contest is running till the 30th of March. All you have to do to enter it is tweet a link to our show out to your followers, and remember to put the hashtag Dungeoncast so that I can catch it and enter you on this list. You will get a shout out, and you will be entered into this contest.
Hashtag Dungeoncast. That's one. Feel free to put that on anything.
Yeah,
we
yeah.
like seeing it.
Anything and everything.
And Will's real good about going through the Twitter. So if you put that on something, Will's gonna see it. So yeah, really appreciate you guys. You can find our show on SoundCloud.com/thedungeoncast. You can find us on YouTube. That's picking up some steam.
Yeah, I would
getting a
say
lot of
so.
subs and views there. And yeah, you can tweet at us at the Dungeoncast, obviously, or you can email us at gmail.com. That's thedungeoncast@gmail.com. Is there anything else we want to say before we get back to this?
You know what? Let's get back to gnomes.
Let's get back to some of these little gnomes. Okay, well, so we've talked about some forest gnomes. We've talked about rock gnomes,
we
but
did.
I don't think we got into what rock gnomes look like. I'm kind of curious.
Oh yeah, I did. I described what forest gnomes look like, but not rock gnomes. I've seen rock gnomes done in a few ways. I've seen them done in the really tiny, like almost like not quite garden gnome size, but real small, like
Yeah.
1.5 feet tall.
Yeah.
With like a wrench in one hand, goggles on, and they're ready to fuck shit
Oh,
up
I think
in,
I've seen some art like
engines.
that. That's
You see
pretty cool.
World of Warcraft actually is a really good example of that iteration of the gnome.
Cool.
And World of Warcraft gnomes are very rock gnome like, and yeah, that's probably where they got.
Would you
the
say
idea
like
from.
a rock gnome has a little more like he's been lifting? He's a little more buff.
There's no stats that they get. Well, they get constitution, so yeah, a little bit. They're a little more hardy because they're working with machine work, I guess. They also like it underground a little bit more.
Okay.
I've seen rock gnomes that are a little bit more like stubby and knobby in features, but I've also seen plenty of rock gnomes that kind of look more like forest gnomes, just less colorful.
Okay.
So they're just as not just as dexterous, but they're just as slender.
Yeah,
and the same
I
height
picture
and all that.
stuff in the Fae looking, more colorful and vibrant, and maybe a rock gnome looking a little more like, earthy toned
Exactly.
skin and hair and stuff like
Exactly.
that. Maybe eyes.
So it's kind of funny. Like I've seen rock gnomes, more iterations of the rock gnome than other kinds of gnomes. Other kinds of gnomes are more like there's
It's
one
kind of
kind.
steampunky. You got some goggles on and a wrench.
Very
So the
steampunky.
Steampunk
yeah.
is pretty cool.
Yeah,
right now.
absolutely. I'm not too familiar with the Eberron setting, but I do know it's pretty steampunk, and I wouldn't be surprised if gnomes are fairly prominent.
Oh, cool.
I don't know.
Man.
Maybe a listener can tell me. I'd like to hear it.
Yeah, if you have some information about gnomes that we're not touching on here, I know we're kind of we're stabbing in the dark a little bit here. We're not. I don't think this is either of our forte, but
I'm not a gnome expert. But
yeah,
I know a little of the gnome.
I would like to know more. So if you guys have anything you want to tweet out at us, that'd be awesome. I'd love to see something about that.
I think generally across all three gnome subtypes, because we're about to get into deep gnomes after this.
How deep are
they're
your
all very
gnomes?
skillful. Gnomes are very skillful. They're good at doing very specific things.
Things.
But working with their hands. Like forest gnomes are very good at spell work. And
Yeah,
being stealthy.
cool.
Rock gnomes are very good at invention and working with their hands.
Deep gnomes are good at getting deep.
Well, yeah, they are. They're good at getting deep because they are great miners.
Whatever that means.
They delve deep.
They delve.
They delve real deep.
They
and
go
they're
deep,
master
they roll
miners.
deep.
And as such, I think they have a tendency to be fairly master crafters, nowhere near like what dwarves are. Dwarves,
Yeah, I'm
kinda
sure they're
have
having to make
that
tools and
on
things.
lockdown. But yeah, exactly. They're master miners. So let's talk about the Svirfneblin or deep gnomes. Yeah, you heard me right. The Svirfneblin. That's probably the best you'll ever hear me say it because it's your god.
Svirfneblins.
Yeah, Svirfneblin. Yeah, deep gnomes. So deep gnomes live in the Underdark. And they're one of the few things in the Underdark that are not mean and nasty.
Like dark elves.
Like dark elves or
The
Duergar
drow.
or pretty much anything
what?
down there. Illithids and Grimlocks and Beholders and all kinds of other bullshit.
Is the beholder in the Underdark?
Yeah, a lot of times they'll be found down there. I mean, it's a nasty, scary place. We will do an Atlas Exteris episode on the Underdark. And
Interesting.
It's way scarier than the Feywild, I will tell you that.
Oh, yeah, it has to be.
Yeah, so... But yes,
Unless you have dark
deep
vision,
gnomes make their
everything
home
has dark
there. They live their entire lives underground, deep underground. Because of the nature of where they live and how mean and nasty their environment is, they're very guarded and very suspicious of other people.
Okay.
They do not trust easily.
Okay.
Because they can't. Like forest gnomes and rock gnomes have the benefit of being surrounded by a bunch of really dope, bigger races that generally keep the peace.
Yeah, there's
So
probably some kind of symbiotic relationships going on.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. So forest gnomes and rock gnomes are very curious and explorative and enthusiastic and trusting. Deep gnomes are the opposite. They keep close knit. They keep guarded. They don't talk too much. They're very suspicious. They're very serious.
We don't trust shit. We don't trust you. Who are you with? Did you come with the beholder? Fuck you.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much exactly
stay
that.
out of our
Yeah.
section of the Underdark, you motherfuckers.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Oh,
And
man.
and like I think in Forgotten Realms there's another species that's very deep gnome-esque looking. They're like, so what gnomes are to elves and what halflings are to humans, the Darrow are to dark elves, kind of. And the Darrow are mean, nasty, very drow-looking halfling people. They're just murderous. They just love to kill. They're nasty little fuckers.
Just hang out, wait for something to come by, and then they murder it a little bit.
Fuck those guys. So they got to deal with that. They got to deal with all the bad stuff, and like they're not too trusting.
Cool.
But they are good at mining, and they ought to be because they're surrounded by nothing but rock all around. Interestingly enough, they have very dark gray skin, much like the Duergar, the Dark Elves, or the Darrow. While all three of those other races have pure white hair, and forest gnomes and rock gnomes have very wild hair, and in case of forest gnomes, colorful hair. All deep gnomes are born bald and remain bald. They're just bald.
That's drastically different.
Yes, for whatever reason. Yeah.
Okay,
they have a
cool.
very distinct look, and I like deep gnomes. I think they're cool. They're very dwarf-like without being too dwarf-like. I don't know what it is. They're very serious, and obviously they live underground and they're good at mining.
And they're mining, yeah.
But they're not like all gruffy like dwarves. So it's a nice change.
Okay, cool.
Also, deep gnomes get an optional feat. It's the only feat in the game that I know of so far that is race specific, which for 5th edition is very out of the ordinary. In previous editions, that is not out of the ordinary in any way. There is a plethora of race specific feats throughout 4th edition and 3rd, 3.5, and Pathfinder editions.
That's interesting.
I am drawing a blank of what the feat does, so I'm going to have to look it up in just a second. But
Okay.
But yeah, like they have an optional feat and cut.
Okay, go to the feet.
Seamless. This is seamless.
This is a seamless cut that I'm gonna do in the post.
This is all getting edited out.
I really like thinking about the hair, the different variations of hair that
Stop
gnomes have to offer.
Talking about content. We're supposed to cut this.
I think I'm gonna leave it in.
God damn it. Okay, so looking at this handy dandy phone right here, the optional feat is called. Oh God, I gotta say it again. Svirfneblin magic. Svirfneblin magic, and the prerequisite is that you are a deep gnome. You have an inherited innate spellcasting ability of your ancestors. This ability allows you to cast non-detection on yourself at will without needing a material component. You can also cast each of the following spells once with this ability: blindness/deafness, blur, and disguise self. You regain the ability to cast these spells when you finish a long rest. And intelligence is your spellcasting ability for these, and you have to cast them at their lowest possible levels.
So these guys have a +2 to intelligence, right? As gnomes?
They do. All gnomes do.
Cool.
And I believe they get a +1 to Constitution as well. Let me check that real quick.
Svirfneblin.
Oh no, they actually, much like forest gnomes, they get dexterity. I think this ties into the fact, and you can kind of see this from their innate spellcasting ability, is they have to be really good at hiding.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Everything around them is horrible, nasty, very powerful, and out to kill anything it sees.
You got to sneak about in the Underdark.
Exactly. So they have to stay hidden. Because of that, they also have stone camouflage.
That's a cool ability.
Blends really well. So
really
again,
like
they're really
that.
good at staying hidden.
Nailed with stone, all that stuff is really cool.
Yeah, exactly. And then like some of the spells they're getting from this feat that you would have to take a level 4 theoretically. Non-detection, casting that on yourself. Blindness and deafness. Again, these are all ways of staying alive and staying hidden and getting away, which is an interesting way to play a character. Like I imagine, if you're playing a deep gnome, the gnome that you're playing might have a strong disposition to flee before ever fighting.
Oh yeah,
maybe they only fight when they're backed into a corner, and like if escape is an option, they just instinctually take it.
I imagine that you're gonna get cornered every now and again, so you have to have some fighting skill.
Yeah, absolutely. And while all gnomes get dark vision, deep gnomes, much like dark elves, get superior dark vision, which of course is
that like double the
It's double
120.
Yeah, 120. Interestingly enough, they don't get the sunlight sensitivity that dark elves get.
Yeah, so
I don't know why.
What was that again? When you come out of the Underdark and you're in the sunlight, you get a -2
disadvantage on all attack rolls and ability checks.
Damn,
it's
son.
Nasty bad. Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's cool. It doesn't deter you from playing that deep gnome.
Yeah, exactly. So, that's all 3 types of gnomes. The first 2 of which are in the player's handbook. The deep gnomes are actually in the player's companion guide to the Temple of Elemental Evil. It is free. You do not have to purchase it. It's a free PDF. Wizards provides it on their website.
Wizards
I highly
of the
recommend
Coast.
you. There's all kinds of cool stuff in there. There's like 4 races, a bunch of spells.
I'm going to check that out.
Yeah, it's really cool. The Genasi are in there. The Goliaths and the Aarakocra are all in there.
Cool. Definitely cool. I love all those.
So yeah, go check it out. If you haven't heard of it for whatever reason, hey, that's free official material that's been play tested. It's not an Unearth Arcana. This shit is official.
Nice. So what's your favorite gnome out of the 3?
Forest gnomes.
Forest gnomes.
But I like.
Did you say
nature.
that already?
I might have, but if I didn't, I love forest gnomes. Mostly because they can speak to small beasts, and that's cool. And illusion's
Hell yeah.
cool.
You must have said that.
And I like the Fae. And I like rangers, and I want to do a forest gnome ranger. I've done a forest gnome ranger actually.
Oh, that's cool.
It's a lot of fun. Yeah, with the snow leopard pet that I could talk to because I could speak with small beasts, and snow leopards are technically pretty small.
Yeah.
So
That's badass.
yeah, I like forest gnomes a lot, but I like all 3 types of gnomes. I don't see gnomes enough. I feel as a DM, like more players should explore them. They're a lot of fun. I know Critical Role has 2 gnomes on the party.
Oh yeah, they're pretty cool.
But I'm pretty much done on delving this knowledge out of my head on gnomes. Did you have any other questions for me before we say bye to the listeners?
I think it's time to call it a game and say bye to the listeners.
I think we're done.
Goodbye, listeners.
Goodbye, listeners.
We're calling it a game.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening. Thank you, listeners.
See you next time.
We'll see you next week.
Bye.